and it's great to see, judging from the names, it's great to see so many familiar names and some new ones as well. So as Nikki said, my name's Damien, and I am a post-primary teacher of French and German in Ireland, and I'm also a former eTwinning ambassador, who has actually recently won a European Language Label Award for my work supporting creativity and reflective practice in the modern foreign languages classroom. I'm really, really beyond thrilled to be working with you all today. But before we get started, in order to gauge where we are from, where everybody's from in the chat, if you want to put into the chat function there where you are from, and also what are you, a post-primary teacher? Are you a primary teacher? If you want to put that into that. So where you're from and who you teach. I'll give you a moment or two for that. So hello from Romania, hello from Croatia, great. We have another person from Romania, another person from Romania, great. We have someone from Cavan, very good. We have somebody from Spain, Hungary, Greece, great. Great, we have somebody from Spain, we have somebody from Croatia, we have somebody from Italy, great, somebody from Turkey, somebody from Poland. Wow, somebody from Croatia who's a speech language therapist. Very good. Hello from France, an extremely diverse group. Somebody from Bulgaria. Great. There's somebody from Macedonia. Okay, so we have those names coming in there. There's somebody there who teaches French and English. Great, another language teacher. Okay, so and please feel free to keep those coming in. It's just great to see such a diverse group, as Nikki said, from all over the EU. So just before we start, okay, as part of today's webinar, you know, I would like to outline Netiquette here, okay? So I'll give you a moment there to read what's on screen. And again, I'd really like to emphasize the fact that this evening's workshop is about learning from each other, and you get out what you put in, so please contribute to the webinar as much as possible. All right. And obviously the microphones are muted there, which is great as well. But obviously, if you have a chance to, if you want to contribute, you'll be able to do so. But just to make sure that when you're not talking, just to have your microphones on mute, because it prevents the background noise. All right. No problem, Alex. Okay. So what we are going to do there, we're going to progress here, and I'm going to give you a moment there to read what's on screen. So these are the intentions for this webinar. So we're going to consider how all teachers can support the embedding of well-being into the curriculum, and we are going to explore various strategies to elicit student voice in the classroom. And we are also going to investigate the possibilities of using eTwinning to support the embedding of well-being into the curriculum. And again, this is an opportunity for us to work together and really utilize and benefit from the experience in the room. And again, folks, if you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them into the chat. Okay. So what we are going to do now, we're going to start off with this. So really, before we begin, it's important to gain a better understanding of why well-being matters in your own school context, all right? So now we're going to engage in a Mentimeter activity. So you can scan the QR code, all right, which is on screen, or I might get Nikki to put in the link into the chat for me. Perfect. So the link is in the chat there now. All right. So what we are going to do is we're going to have a look at why well-being is important in your own school context. Okay. So we'll give a couple of moments there for that. And again, folks, if anybody has any questions, please do let me know. So we have responses coming in, which is great. So I'll give a couple of moments there, folks. It's great to see that there's so many other results coming in there. So once we're finished this, I will share the results, all right, on screen, and we'll talk through them. So some great responses coming in here. So just a couple of more moments there, folks. Hello from Turkey, and hello again from Croatia. Just looking at the chat there. Hello from Georgia. So keep those responses coming, folks. There's some great stuff coming in here. Hello from Spain. So again, folks, just to clarify, just click on the link that Nikki posted in the chat there for the Mentimeter. And then what you're going to do is you're going to answer the question of why is well-being important in your own school context. And if you don't want to use the link, you can scan the QR code there. So just one more moment there, folks. So Marion, we have that there for you now. You should get the link there. Okay. So folks, what we are going to do now, and again, please feel free to continue adding to it. Okay. So these are the responses that we have here now, which I think are very interesting. I'm just going to actually put this up on the screen. Yeah, so we have the responses here. So as we can see, why is well-being important in your own school context? So strengthens the school, mental health awareness, very important. Post-pandemic issues, we have tight deadlines, we have good atmosphere, absolutely. Good and healthy, motivation, success, good for all, absolutely. Engagement, relaxed atmosphere, everything is beautiful, need to strike a balance, absolutely. Positive learning we have there as well, and we have no anxiety, we have self-esteem, and we have happy students, teachers, absolutely. So as we can see there, it's evident, that it is very important across the board. Okay. So thank you very much for that, folks. And again, folks, if you please do feel free to add it there throughout the webinar. If you feel that there is something important to add there, please feel free to add it there, because it is yours, so you can go back to it then. Okay, so we are going to move on there now. Okay, so I suppose, before we, as we consider well-being within the context of our own schools, it's important to touch on societal well-being. And this infographic that we have on screen derived from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And this is from the OECD framework for measuring well-being and progress. It highlights that societal progress is about improvements in the well-being of people and households. So I really, really love to get some feedback in relation to this. When you look at this infographic here, okay, on screen, what stands out for you? All right, if you want to put your responses into the chat. So when you look at this particular infographic from the OECD Well-being framework, what stands out for you? So if you want to put your responses into the chat. So what are you surprised by? What are you not surprised by when you look at that infographic on screen? So I'll give you a couple of moments to do that. Or, what do you find interesting about the infographic on screen? So, Margaret, the inclusion of natural capital in future well-being. Happy? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much for that. It's very important. And it's that element of future-proofing it. Absolutely. So folks, like I said, if you want to put it into the chat, when you look at this framework here, what stands out for you? What are you surprised by? Or what are you happy to see there? So, Emmy, environment quality, we don't pay enough attention to this. Thank you very much for that, Emmy. Yeah, I mean, it's important because the environment's for us all and we need to look after it. Absolutely, it's an important point. So thank you very much for that. Interested to know more about what subjective well-being entails. We'll be going into that in a little bit more detail as we go on. Absolutely, Margaret. And how we can support it within a school context as well. So interesting to focus on deprivation and inequalities. So I suppose how do we measure? And it's important. I mean, it's an important conversation to have, in relation to that. But no, valid points. So we have Cecilia, health and safety are definitely top priorities. Absolutely. And Sian, how is social capital defined? So if we see there the likes of, if we see there the likes of, business or that kind of thing. That's how it would be, or no, people connections and things like that. Working with other people as well. That's how it would be defined. So who else do we have here? All these dimensions are just important and not surprised. Absolutely. Yeah. And Lana, yeah, absolutely. That work-life balance and they're so very important. Is with the averages, and again, Daniela, you've made a valid point there. To why or to whom are the averages important? It's one of these things where when it measures well-being and progress, and it highlights that societal progress is about improvements of well-being in the well-being of people and households. So there's that element as well to consider. And we have Loretta. We had the way in how we measure well-being is different. Okay, totally agree with Lana. Work-life balance. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it is. It's extremely helpful. So it's very interesting to see that those different responses of what stands out for people there, and it is evident from the responses in the chat. As well as research being as well as research being carried out for the well-being and the measures start to make a real difference in people, for it to make a real difference in people's lives, it has to be explicitly brought into the policy making process. All right. So I suppose it's something very important to consider there. And when we talk about policy, these are some things, obviously, I'm from Ireland, and these, keeping what we said in mind, we're going to highlight some examples of policies within the educational context in Ireland that support well-being. Okay, so as you can see on the screen there, they are the Well-being Policy Statement and Framework for Practice 2019, and also the Junior Cycle Wellbeing Guidelines. So the revised. So as we can see, there's the Junior Cycle Wellbeing Guidelines 2021. So they're revised ones. All right. So both key documents, they make reference to how supporting well-being in schools leads to better outcomes for students. With this in mind, all right, I want to draw your attention to something that has been said in our Junior Cycle Wellbeing Guidelines on page 8. All right. So this is what we have here. Okay. So it talks about, on page 8 in these guidelines, it talks about learning about and learning for well-being. Okay. So, as we can see from the slide here, like I said, it references a learning about and for well-being. And this is what they're defined as. And, this is something really that, we consider when we're talking about learning, when we're talking about well-being. We're talking about those elements of learning about and learning for well-being. So as you can see there, with regards to learning about well-being, schools have a central role to play in supporting and promoting students learning about well-being and for well-being. Students learn about well-being through specific areas of the curriculum and through special well-being events and initiatives designed to develop their awareness, knowledge, and understanding of well-being, and which help them to promote their own well-being and that of others. Okay. So, and it talks about seeing well-being through the lens of learning about well-being and learning for well-being enables members of the school community to see themselves having a role and responsibility in supporting students' well-being. I think that's very important there, because again, it isn't just the teacher in the classroom. There are so many other elements to consider. All right. And as well, when we consider about learning for well-being, they learn for well-being when they experience, when their experience of school life and their day-to-day interactions, both within and beyond the classroom, are respectful and caring. And as we can see there, thinking about learning for well-being requires that we consider not only what students learn, but how they learn it. All right. So there's that important element there to consider. So learning for well-being can be nurtured in all subjects and by all teachers. Okay, I think that's really important. Like I said before, it isn't just it isn't just teachers being siloed by themselves. It is a whole school endeavour. All right. So when we talk about that, when we talk about well-being being a whole school endeavour, it does involve considerations of these aspects. Okay, so as we can see here, it talks about culture. And when we think about culture, we talk about school mission and ethos. These are some things to consider. And when we talk about relationships, we talk about that physical and social environment. Okay, And also when we think about, when we think and talk about well-being as a whole school endeavour, we also have to consider policy and planning. And with that in mind, when we consider policy and planning, we talk about school policies, if we have a school self-evaluation, or when we're talking about, subject and school planning, or when we're talking about our continuous professional development planning as well. All right. And again, when we talk about well-being being a whole school endeavour, we need to consider the curriculum as well. All right. And when we consider the curriculum, we consider, subjects and learning experiences. We consider extracurricular and co-curricular learning experiences also. Okay. And I suppose these are just, some things to consider when we're, like I've said, when we're talking about supporting well-being as a whole school endeavour. Okay. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay, folks. Well, if anybody does have any questions, please do feel free to put them into the chat. And again, we're just looking at the chat there. And when we were talking about the OECD well-being framework, we were looking at it there. And something that shot out, that stood out for someone was the self and healthy environment. Yeah, also really, really important. So with what we have said and with what has been said in the chat and what I've put up here, all right, keeping that in mind, I want you to consider the following. All right, what is considered in your school context when planning for well-being? All right. So I'd like to get your feedback on that, on the following question there. So if you can put that into the chat for me, please. I'll give you a couple of moments for that. So what is considered in your school's context when planning for well-being? So what I might do, just to support you with your thinking, I might leave this here just to help support your thinking while you're giving me some feedback into the chat. So what is considered in your school's context when you're planning for well-being? So I'll give you a couple of moments there. So if we can get some feedback into the chat. So if students' needs and interests, absolutely, Marion. Yeah, really important point. Students and teachers' needs, absolutely. Social environment relations between teachers and students, absolutely. The non-class based environment, there's that element of it as well, absolutely. We have empathy and inclusion, absolutely. Extracurricular and curricular learning experience, school policies inclusion, yeah, absolutely. Gabriella, extracurricular activities, yeah, absolutely. There is that element of it as well. If it's relevant to the well-being program in your school, absolutely. Students' relationships, that rapport, absolutely, yeah. Inclusion, yeah, absolutely. Learning experiences through which students learn, but also have a good time. An interesting one there. Thank you very much for that, Natalia. Implementation of students' experience. So we keep students' experiences and we keep their interests in mind when we're planning, absolutely. And we're seeing if there's an we're always very mindful of, when we're planning our well-being programs, we're always mindful of, students as a whole, if there is an identified need there. Absolutely. So relationships, living together, empathy, there's that empathy element, absolutely. And those relationships that you have in the class, yeah, really important point there. And it goes back to as well the school mission and ethos as well. Yeah. We'll just give another moment or two there for that. So what is considered, like I said, what is considered in your school's context when planning for well-being? We'll just give another couple of moments there. And it's great to see there that there's such, there's such and a lot of you've alluded to that, including the student in it and being mindful of the student and, having that authentic use of student voice, which is so very important. Okay. So, folks, what we're going to do now is when we talk about student voice, okay. Oh, Andrea said motivational leadership, absolutely, and I think those involved in leadership positions within your school, they do play an important role in supporting your well-being plans within school. Absolutely, yeah. So I might just get some, I might gauge the, before we go into this, I might just gauge the knowledge in the room. Who has heard of the Lundy model of child participation? It's okay if you haven't, but like I said, if you just want to put it into the chat, just to gauge if anybody has heard of this before. Not, okay. Yes, great. Yes, the power of yes. No, okay, it's new to me, okay. 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 Never knew. Run reading descriptions of the webinar. Okay. Okay. Well, there are some, and that's okay as well. So there are. It's great to see that there's such a difference. There's such some people have heard of it, some people haven't, and we're going to highlight it here. So, you know, as young people are considered a crucial element in relation to what we do as educators, it is important that we ensure that meaningful participation by children or young people in schools is listened to. All right. And we're going to listen to briefly to Professor Laura Lundy. And Laura Lundy, she's a co-director of the Centre for Children's Rights, and she's a professor in the School of Social Sciences and Education and Social Work at Queen's University. All right. So what she has done is she has developed a model for meaningful participation by children and young people, which include the features that you see on screen. Now, I will be going into it in more detail in the next slide. All right, but just to highlight it, and again, it is centered around Article 12. So, her model, so the Lundy model of child participation, in a 2007 publication in the British Educational Journal, it provides a way of conceptualizing a child's right to participation, as is laid down in Article 12 of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child. And, just to really highlight that this is a European and, a world context, okay? So it doesn't necessarily just apply to the Irish educational context, but it can apply anywhere. All right. So just to be mindful of that. So what I'm going to do is I am going to play the clip there now. And if anybody is having any issues with the sound, please do let us know in the chat. And we might get some feedback if you have any at the end.
That the framework is really hangs on the Lundy model. And again, because of Laura's unbelievable, I suppose, generosity and the fact that ultimately her main goal is to make sure that children and young people in Ireland and all over the world have a stronger voice in decision making. She agreed to a process of reviewing her model to try to make the model easier for decision makers to use. So we redesigned it as a pathway so that it now, we hope, is easier for people to look at and say, I know how to follow this. There's a clear pathway and a clear direction of travel. And this direction of travel takes decision makers through space, voice, audience, and influence, which are the 4 elements that Laura Lundy invented to help conceptualize Article 12 of the Convention and give children and young people a voice in decision making.
So again, that was just a brief overview of the Lundy model of child participation. So again, like we said before, it's about making sure that students and their voices and their opinions are valued. All right. And again, we will be going through that in more detail now. So as you can see here, when we do consider the Lundy model, we need to consider the following. All right. So if you see within the space quadrant, all right, it talks about, children must be given safe and inclusive opportunities to express their view. Okay. And one thing that we really have to consider as well is that, are the young people affected by if there's a particular issue or if there's a particular identified need in school when we talk about well-being, is there, are the young people affected by a particular issue? Are they involved? Okay. So when it talks about voice as well, it talks about how children must be facilitated to express their view. And when we're thinking about that and when we're reflecting on that, we need to consider, do the young people have the information they need to form a view? Do they have the language in order to express themselves when they're forming their view? All right. And when we talk about audience, all right, we need to consider we need to consider that the view must be listened to by those in decision-making power. All right. And with that in mind, we need to consider as well, is there a process in place to ensure that young people's voices are given, correct consideration? All right. That that their issues are acknowledged and that they're acted upon. All right. And when we talk about audience, then that leads into influence. And as I was just saying, that they need to be acted on. When we talk about influence, we need to consider that the view must be acted upon as appropriate. And as well, when we're thinking about influence, we also need to think about, are students, are they given feedback? Are they given proper feedback that they can understand in relation to why, any particular decision was taken? Okay, so it's not just a case of it's this because I said so, so that that their voices are given due weight and consideration, but also if a particular decision is being made, that our students being given feedback into relation to why that decision is being made. Okay. So considering your own classroom practice and your own experience, again, I would love to get some feedback on this. So with what you've just, what we've just spoken about and keeping that in mind, and again, I'll give you a couple of moments there to feed back into the chat. How do you elicit student voice on an ongoing basis? So how do you ensure that, that you have and that you give students voices due weight and consideration? How do you do that within your own school context? So I'll give you a couple of moments there to give some feedback. Student council, yeah, absolutely. Focus groups, and absolutely. Student council. Student council, okay. Student newsletter, ensuring that students are, ensuring that authentic student voice is there. Very good, Marion. Students have a magazine of their own. Yeah, absolutely. Always leave room for time and discussion. Absolutely. So we have student council there as well. Evaluations and student council, yeah, absolutely. There's that element of that's making sure that their voice is given and they're given feedback, that students are given feedback, and to obviously we endeavor to make sure that their feedback is acknowledged, and we keep that in mind when we're if there any changes are being made. Absolutely. Students are invited to suggest actions for the school or class to participate. Yeah, absolutely. And it's that element of getting the students involved authentically. Marion said, choose your time. Very good. So Lana, student council surveys and workshops, great. And emotions box to write important things anonymously if needed, and giving that space. I mean, it's so very important, and I think it's very interesting that you say about the emotions box. And I suppose it's about giving that space to students and creating that culture in the school where they know that they can express their opinions without fear of being criticized. Absolutely, very important. But again, that culture, it can take over time. It can, take a while to build it up. So we have here students choose the workshops we hold, that they lead, and they also open discussions whenever they feel like, yeah, and about getting them involved, as authentically as possible. Absolutely. Students sometimes participate in teachers' meetings. Yeah, it is that has happened, and it does continue to happen. Absolutely, because I mean, again, students are involved, in so many facets of school life. So it's important to make sure that they do have a seat at the table. Yeah, absolutely. Some great stuff coming in here, folks. So keep it coming. So I'll just give another moment or two there. So what do you do to elicit student voice on an ongoing basis? Surveys, yeah, really important as well. And it's about getting the students to getting the students to their feedback, and making sure that their voice is included. Absolutely. Oh, great. Setting up student teach meets, yeah, it's really important. Make time for informal chats no matter how busy the day is. Yeah, and again, it's about having those rapports in school are so very important. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it builds into the school's culture and things like that. Yeah, really important. Curriculum decided by students. Encourage them to to contribute. Yeah, and really keeping in mind their interests. Yeah, absolutely. Because again, we want them to have autonomy over their learning. Yeah, it's very important. So folks, what we are going to do, all right, with this in mind, again, when we're talking about having students, and really eliciting student voice, it is very important. One of the supports that we have in Ireland, when we think about, planning a coherent wellbeing program within the Irish context, one of the things we do have is the wellbeing indicator checklist. All right. So, oh, great, Angelina, that's fantastic. And what I might do is, if possible, Nikki, could you put that link into the chat for me? Perfect. So this is something to, thank you very much, Nikki. So this is something to consider, okay? Again, this is what we do use here when, these, in Ireland, when well-being is discussed, the well-being indicators are often referenced, all right? And the well-being indicators that we have here are active, being active, responsible, connected, resilient, respected, and aware. So this support was created by Support Services in Ireland to support teachers with integrating well-being into the respective curricula. So as we can see here, I've put a link in, and it's about having those conversations with regards to, well, when we talk about students being responsible, these are some prompt questions to consider. If we consider them being, if we want to support them in being responsible, a question we could ask ourselves is, how do we create an environment where students are encouraged to take care of themselves and the peers in my classroom? Or like, say, for example, if we go down to respected, these are some things, these are some prompts to consider as well. So, if we're supporting students, to be respected or to give respect, these are some prompt questions. So, when we're thinking about planning as well, we can often consider, do students have a voice in my classroom in influencing how they learn? Or, do I respond to all my students with respect? Things like that. So if these are, within the Irish context, these are often used. All right. This support here is often used when we're, having these conversations around planning a coherent wellbeing program. All right. So again, that is in the chat. If you wanted to click on that and download it, please feel free to do so. Because again, if it prompts thinking, or if it prompts conversations within your own school context, all well and good. All right. And it's, something to consider using if appropriate moving forward. All right. So what we are going to do now is we are actually going to have a look at, we did talk about, learning about well-being, learning for well-being, and we talked about, eliciting student voice and things like that. So what I would like us to do, great to hear, Angelina. Great to hear that you'll use it. What I would like us to do now next is have a breakout room activity. Okay. So in this breakout room activity, first of all, I'll have to check. We don't need to do the breakout room activity. We can do this individually. But Nikki, is it possible to do a breakout room here?
Yes, so I've created the rooms. We're going to send you guys off into the rooms. If for any reason you're not able to access the cameras or the microphones, you will be able to come back to this room, and then we can go ahead and do the activity individually.
Perfect. Just before we do that, Nikki, if you can put the Padlet into the chat for me.
Tommy,
Okay.
there you are.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So what I would like us to do, and again, I'm just very conscious of the time, so we might we'll do this for about 7 minutes, okay? And what we will do here is in this Padlet, all right, we'll do it for about, yeah, I'll have a think about it once I finish this. We might adjust the time slightly. So what I want you to do, folks, is that before you go into the breakout room, okay, I want you to make sure that you click on this Padlet, okay, and have this ready, okay, before you go into the breakout room. And then this will come up, okay? So what I would like you to do is, so say, for example, if you're talking about, project ideas, what can we do to support well-being in our school based on your conversations? Yes, I am a fan of Van Gogh as well. So what I want you to do is have a conversation around these 4 prompts, okay? Because again, we will be looking at possibly, yes, the Padlet link. So click on the Padlet link. So I want you to have a conversation around these, okay, and put your responses into the Padlet. So all you have to do is type into the Padlet. I'll put in this and click, put in whatever you need to put in, and then you click on the submit content, and that'll be there. So what you could do is, based on your conversations that you have had, identity check. Oh yeah, well, that is due to Marion, what will happen there is that if you try possibly on another Internet Explorer, that'll work, because sometimes there are issues with Safari. So what you can do is, once you're in the breakout rooms, have conversations around these based on your based on what you've learned, and then submit it to the Padlet. So what can we do to support wellbeing in our schools? Wellbeing whole school endeavour. What can we do? What can we consider doing in schools? When we talk about learning for wellbeing, what are some possible resources that we can use? Or when we talk about learning about wellbeing, what are some possible resources we can use? So make sure you have this link before the breakout rooms are open. Okay, so I will do this for 7 minutes. Yeah, so I'll do this for 7 minutes, folks, right? So are they automatically assigned, Nikki, or do they have to go in by themselves?
No, we're going to open the rooms in a second, and you will be automatically redirected.
Perfect.
So,
okay, so before we open up the breakout rooms, does anybody have any questions? Okay. They can turn on their cameras and they can turn on their mics now, can they?
Yes, looks like it, yeah.
Perfect, okay. Right, folks, so we're going to open the breakout rooms now.
All right.
What we're going to do is we're just going to, actually, some people have contributed to the Padlet there. All right. So what we are going to do now is we're going to have a look at that. So, some people were saying about the project ideas, and again, you can look back at this and you can, you can feel free to add to it moving forward, because again, this is yours. The things you can do is that, like, we have where can eTwinning fit in? We have Education Trinity, provide training for teachers. Absolutely. So another idea would be, how can we support the wellbeing in our school? Is that, learning about and for wellbeing for our students. Is there a need there, or what is the identified need? And, project ideas, we're talking about resilience as well for students. And they were looking here as well, wellbeing as a whole school endeavour. What can we do to support students? So, we can, or what can we do to support students as, as part of supporting wellbeing as a whole school endeavour in our schools? We can look at a culture of collaboration. We can look at working together. We can look at, is there an identified need in the school, it says. And it also says here, make sure that everything links. So it looks here as well. We have, we're talking about as a whole school endeavour. What can we do to consider support wellbeing in schools? We can have a culture that is motivating and supporting. Absolutely. And then for learning for wellbeing, we have another thing here, which is giving students a place for them to participate in shared time and experiences along with teachers. Absolutely. And then we have other ideas coming in for eTwinning about, involving the local community as well. So there are some stuff there. And again, please feel free to go back to it. Please feel free to go back to it. When you leave the idea, when you could be looking at this video again. And please feel free to go back to what has been said in the Padlet and the various information, because again, that can prompt thinking for, other ideas, whether it's for your school, whether it's eTwinning projects for your school. So that is something important to consider. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, folks, is I'm actually going to share my screen there, because we only have 1 or 2 minutes left. So as we can see here now, so, we did consider how, with regards to this, throughout this webinar, we did consider how all teachers can support the embedding of wellbeing into the curriculum. And we explored various strategies to elicit student voice in the classroom. And again, as we can see from the Padlet there, we investigated the possibilities of using eTwinning to support the embedding of wellbeing into the curriculum. Okay, so with this in mind, before we finish up, Nikki, into the chat, could you put that link to the eTwinning group, please? So again, as we were talking about, utilizing eTwinning, there is a group there that will that can act as a support for you when you're considering, the whole area of wellbeing and eTwinning themselves. Okay, so please make sure you click. Please make sure that you click on that link and then add yourselves to that group. Okay, so just to highlight that. All right, and again, just to say slán agus míle buíochas. All right, so in Irish that is goodbye and thank you very much. I really did enjoy, working with you today, and it has been an absolute pleasure. So really, thank you very much.
Thank you, Damien, also for taking the time. I really hope that you guys got a lot out of it and got some good ideas for implementing well-being and making it a whole school priority. So as I said, this webinar was recorded, so it will be available on YouTube and it will be put on social media within a couple of days. So thank you guys once again for your participation and have a nice evening.
Thanks very much, everybody.